So let's bring in our panel of China experts. Michael Allen, former Bush national security official, and Heritage Foundation senior advisor Michael Pillsbury. Great to have both of you here to break this down and to look forward a little bit. Here's how the AP spells this out. They say, at stake is nothing less than the future of the global economy. A misstep could send shockwaves through American industries that have already been rattled by Trump's aggressive tariffs, government layoffs, and political brinksmanship. So how tricky is this moving forward?
It's very tricky. The media is covering this from hour to hour. You'll notice the caution and the care in what Scott Bessent and Jameson Greer are saying. Every word is carefully chosen. They're not saying we have a deal. They're not saying, if you have a scorecard. They're not saying they just purchased $50 billion of soybeans. Or they're not saying China just agreed to stop its Navy patrols around Taiwan every day. None of that's happening. A lot of pressure is being put on China, and I think behind this, I would just use the word brilliant. Trump has a brilliant long-term strategy. He knows there's only one person in the world who can make things happen in China. That's Xi Jinping. So what has he done? After this summit, he and Melania are going to China in 3 months. Then Xi and Madame Peng have agreed to come here. So he's laying the framework for a long-term new arrangement where we don't get ripped off and where our economic growth rate is benefited by China. But we still have a long way to go. And that's why every word President Trump is saying also, I think, is very carefully calibrated for how do we get China to make the kind of concessions we need to grow our own economy, and that they not invade Taiwan, and that they agree to one of President Trump's favorite issues. He wants nuclear stability talks with Russia, China, and America together to kind of put a cap on overall nuclear weapons totals. This is a lot to get done, but he's well on the way to doing it by having this, what I call this long-term framework.
And you mentioned Russia and all of those interchanges there. There's reporting the president is going to press China to be more helpful when it comes to Russia. How does that conversation go? And how do we measure any kind of concrete success from this particular meeting?
Well, I think just in terms of success for this meeting, if it turns out to be a fragile truce and the framework goes forward and the markets are calmed, I think that would be great. We were two loaded guns aimed at each other, and if we've begun to back away from that, that is terrific news. If he raises Russia with Xi Jinping, I don't expect him to have a lot of success. Xi Jinping, at the end of the day, wants to see Russia succeed. China, however, is keeping Vladimir Putin's wartime economy afloat. So if the president is serious about continuing, like he's been doing, putting pressure on the Russians to condition them to make concessions like a ceasefire, he might consider continuing the tariffs that he wants to do. And so I think these are just important tools. We're talking about economic warfare tools across the board, and I think this is just typical of this new era of geopolitical competition that we're in.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, we had the daughter of one of the pastors. She's a U.S. citizen. Her father is one of these pastors that was rounded up all across China. And I wonder if the timing is coordinated to the meetings we're having now. Are they bargaining chips? There are questions about whether President Trump will raise those issues, human rights abuses as well with China.
I was just in Rome at the Vatican last week, you'll be happy to know. They're quite alarmed at this new treatment of Christians in China. This used to be a kind of solved problem. Now, these look like systematic arrests to deliberately take hostages, and perhaps even to undo the Vatican-China deal of about 8 years ago. So this is a very alarming, but again, it's the kind of thing that Trump and Xi Jinping together, if Xi Jinping thinks he's going to head off 100% tariffs by releasing some Catholic leaders, he'll do it. But there's no other way. I'm not a big believer in dialogue, with human rights people asking other human rights people what to do. The Chinese are a dictatorship. They're not going to do anything for free. So this Xi Jinping-Trump relationship, just as Michael was saying, is globally important.
And end of the day, what do you think is the top takeaway from this? They've talked fentanyl, they've talked soybeans, they've talked rare earths. Which is the most crucial for this meeting?
Well, I think it's terrific if we did get some soybean purchases out of here, and I expect the Chinese will say that they've agreed to something as it comes to fentanyl. So I think it's going to be seen as a success. But we're not out of the woods on this. We are quite dependent on China for rare earth minerals. We have to get out from underneath this ton of bricks. I know the Trump White House knows this. They're working with speed, but we need an Operation Warp-styled crash effort to develop our own rare earths. I know they want to do that, but we've got to do that sooner rather than later because we don't want to be leveraged by China like we have been over the last 2 weeks.
Well, much to see and watch and wait for this meeting coming together. We believe it's going to happen, and when we have a readout, we'll head back to our experts to see how it went. Gentlemen, thank you both. Good to have you in this morning.
Thanks, Shannon.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.